There is a scene playing out inside your body that you cannot feel. Insulin is flooding your bloodstream right now, slamming into the surface of your muscle cells, and those cells are ignoring it. Not because insulin is missing, because the locks on those cells have been jammed from the inside. Glucose is piling up in your blood with nowhere to go, and your pancreas, desperate to fix the problem, is pumping out 2, 3, even 5 times the normal amount of insulin. It has been doing this for months, maybe years, and you have no idea, because there is no pain, no symptom, no warning. Roughly 4 in teen adults are living in this exact state right now. Most of them think they're fine. Here's what most people get wrong. They hear insulin resistance and think it means too much sugar. Cut the carbs, lose the weight, problem solved. But that misses what's actually broken. This is not a sugar problem. It is a cellular signaling failure. Tiny fat droplets called diacylglycerols have built up inside your muscle and liver cells, and they are physically blocking insulin signal from reaching the machinery that pulls glucose out of your blood. Your insulin receptors are right there on the surface, working fine, but the message they send gets intercepted and shut down before it ever arrives. And here is the part that changes everything. You can start reversing that signaling failure in days, not months, days, well before any weight comes off. I am going to walk you through the 4 specific mechanisms that directly repair insulin sensitivity in the exact order they activate inside your body. You will see what is broken at the cellular level, why each intervention works at that level, and the real timelines, week by week, for when measurable change begins. These are not lifestyle tips. These are molecular levers. Let's start with the one that breaks first. Think of your cell like a door with a deadbolt. Insulin is the key. Under normal conditions, insulin slides into the receptor on the cell surface. The lock turns and a chain of signals fires off inside the cell. That chain ends with something called a GLUT4 transporter, a tiny glucose door that rises to the surface and opens to let sugar in. Simple, elegant. It works thousands of times a day without you thinking about it. But in insulin resistance, that lock is gummed up from the inside, not because the key is wrong, not because the lock is missing, because tiny fat droplets called diacylglycerols have built up inside the cell and are physically jamming the signal chain. These fat droplets activate an enzyme called PKC, which flips a molecular switch on the wrong part of the relay system. Instead of the signal passing cleanly from the receptor to the GLUT4 transporter, it gets intercepted and shut down. The glucose door never rises. The sugar stays in your blood. And here is the part that rewrites everything you thought you knew about this condition. The amount of fat stored inside your muscle cells predicts insulin resistance more accurately than your body weight does. A lean person with high levels of fat packed inside their muscle fibers can be more insulin resistant than someone 50 pounds heavier with less of it. It was never about how much you weigh. It was about where fat ends up at the cellular level. Your pancreas sees the rising blood sugar and does the only thing it knows how to do. It floods the system with more insulin. 2 times normal, 3 times, sometimes 5. That massive insulin surge forces some glucose through, but it also drives more fat storage and more inflammation, which jams the locks even further. A vicious cycle powered by the very hormone trying to fix the problem. So how do you unjam the lock when the key no longer works? You bypass it entirely. Your skeletal muscles are responsible for about 80% of all insulin-driven glucose disposal in your body. They are the primary destination for blood sugar after a meal, And they have a back door that most people have never heard of. When a muscle contracts, when you walk, lift, push, or climb, it activates an enzyme called AMPK. AMPK does something remarkable. It triggers GLUT4 transporters to rise to the cell surface and open, completely independent of insulin. No key needed, no jammed lock. The muscle is pulling glucose in through pure mechanical demand. 30 minutes of moderate walking after a meal can drop your post-meal blood sugar by 20 to 30%. Not because you burned off the calories, because you physically opened glucose channels that insulin could not. But here is the critical detail. That sensitivity boost is temporary. It lasts 24 to 48 hours, then fades. After 72 hours of inactivity, it is largely gone. This is why someone who crushes a single intense workout on Saturday, but sits at a desk Monday through Friday, sees almost no lasting benefit. Frequency is the lever. Every day or every other day keeps the back door propped open. And when you sustain that pattern over weeks, something deeper happens. Resistance training in particular increases the total number of GLUT4 transporters your muscle cells produce by 30 to 40%. You are not just opening existing doors. You are building new ones, more permanent ones. Measurable improvement in insulin sensitivity shows up within 1 week of consistent moderate exercise. No weight loss required. The cells change before the scale does. But muscles are only one half of the equation. Your liver is the other. While your muscles handle glucose after meals, your liver controls what happens in between. It manages your fasting blood sugar. And if your liver is packed with fat, it loses the ability to respond to insulin's signal to stop dumping glucose into your bloodstream. It just keeps producing and releasing sugar around the clock, even while you sleep. This is called hepatic insulin resistance, and it is shockingly common. About 30% of all adults have some degree of fatty liver. Among people who are insulin resistant, that number jumps to nearly 70%. But here is the revelation. Your liver turns over fat fast, much faster than your belly or your thighs. A modest calorie reduction, even 500 calories a day, can shrink liver fat by 20 to 30% in just 2 weeks. That is not a typo. 2 weeks. And it only takes a 3 to 5 percentage point drop in liver fat to produce measurable improvement in fasting glucose. This is why so many people see their blood sugar numbers improve before they have lost a single visible pound. The liver was the bottleneck, and it clears quickly. One specific accelerator here is cutting liquid fructose. Sodas, fruit juice, sweetened drinks. Your liver processes fructose preferentially and converts it directly into new fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. Removing those drinks has an outsized effect on liver fat compared to cutting the same number of calories from other sources. Extending your overnight fast to 12 or 14 hours gives your liver time to finish its fat-burning cycle before you eat again, further reducing that internal fat load. So movement clears the muscle, dietary shifts clear the liver. But there is a third force that can block the entire recovery even if you do both of those things perfectly. Inflammation, your visceral fat, the deep fat around your organs, is not just storage. It functions as an endocrine organ. It actively secretes inflammatory molecules called cytokines, specifically TNF-alpha and IL-6, that travel through your bloodstream and attack insulin signaling at the exact same point that intracellular fat does. Same lock, same jam, different saboteur. And one of the most potent drivers of this inflammation has nothing to do with food. It is sleep. 1 week of sleeping 5 hours a night produces a level of insulin resistance equivalent to gaining 20 to 30 pounds of fat. Your TNF alpha and IL-6 levels spike by 15 to 40%. Your insulin sensitivity drops by 25 to 30%, all within days. Sleep is not recovery. It is a direct metabolic intervention. On the dietary side, increasing fiber intake to 30 or more grams per day shifts your gut microbiome toward bacterial profiles that actively suppress systemic inflammation within weeks. Omega-3 fatty acids and polyphenol-rich foods measurably reduce inflammatory markers like CRP and IL-6 in 2 to 4 weeks. These are not vague wellness suggestions. These are inputs that change the biochemical environment your insulin receptors operate in. When you stack all 4 of these mechanisms, something powerful happens. They compound. Exercise clears the fat inside your muscle cells, which unjams the signaling cascade. Liver fat reduction lowers your baseline insulin levels, which slows down new fat storage everywhere. Lower inflammation restores receptor sensitivity, which makes every walk, every workout more effective at pulling glucose in. Each mechanism amplifies the others. Here is what the timeline looks like when they work together. In weeks 1 and 2, the AMPK pathway is active, your liver is shedding fat, and your post-meal blood sugar spikes are already flattening. By weeks 2 through 4, your fasting insulin starts to drop. Your muscles are producing more GLUT, force transporters, and inflammatory markers are trending downward. By weeks 4 through 8, your HOMA-IR, the standard measure of insulin resistance, shows a 20 to 40% improvement. Fasting glucose is normalizing, and these changes hold even without significant weight loss, because the cellular repair is happening before your body composition catches up. Your pancreas, which has been overproducing insulin in desperation for months or even years, begins to ease off. It senses the improved sensitivity at the periphery and dials back its output. It can feel the change before any lab test confirms it. So step back and look at where you are now. You came into this thinking insulin resistance was a vague label. Too much sugar, not enough willpower, maybe some unlucky genetics. Now you see it for what it actually is. A specific signaling failure at the cellular level with 4 identifiable pressure points, each one targetable, each one measurable, and each one already responding faster than you probably expected. The protocol is not complicated. Walk daily, even just 30 minutes, to keep that AMPK pathway firing and those glucose doors open. Cut the liquid fructose and give your liver a 12 to 14 hour overnight window to burn through its fat stores. Sleep 7 or more hours, not as a luxury, but as a direct intervention against the inflammatory signals that jam your insulin receptors. Shift your diet toward fiber, omega-3s, and whole foods that quiet the cytokine noise your visceral fat is broadcasting, and ask your doctor for 2 numbers most people never request: fasting insulin and HOMA-IR, not just fasting glucose. Those 2 markers will show you the reversal weeks before anything else does. Remember that scene from the beginning. Your cells refusing insulin, your pancreas flooding the system in desperation, glucose piling up with nowhere to go. That scene is still playing out inside you. But now you know why the locks are jammed. You know what unjams them. And you know that the repair does not wait for the scale to move or the calendar to turn. Your cells are not broken. They are responding to the environment you have given them. Change the inputs, and the signaling begins to correct itself. Not in months, in days. The body is waiting for a reason to heal. Give it one,